I may not have the face, voice, or persona of Marilyn Monroe or Madonna, but a happy birthday to you. The marvelous Marver's birthday here on the Sports Cubicle as your Chicago Bears beat Lovie Smith's Houston Texans 23-20, moving to 2-1, week 3 of the NFL here on the Sports Cubicle as we have our Bears post-game show. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari later on the show. I'm Mike Mercado, and it was an ugly game. A lot of frustration in this game, some injuries in this game, but the Bears walk out with a victory. Marvelous. On your birthday, we got to see Justin Fields go 8 for 17 and 2 interceptions on 106 yards. But after the really bummer of an injury of David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert steps up. 20 carries, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging about 8 yards a carry. Cole Kmet shows up a little bit with 2 receptions for 40 yards. Darnell Mooney hits the stat sheet, 2 catches for 23. You even saw EQ St. Brown. Khalil Herbert got in the passing game. Byron Pringle until he got hurt. But the big thing I wanted to also mention, give a shout out to Roquan Smith and Eddie Jackson. Both showed up. Ball Hawks. Roquan, who struggled week 2, having a lot of things, not even knowing he was going to play, shows up, has a huge game. Marvelous one. On your birthday, what did you see at Soldier Field? What did you see week 3? What did you see in this 23-20 victory for your Chicago Bears?
Well, I'll mimic what they said in the post game. I mean, Fields said that he was going to use the A word. He said, but he played badly, and he wants to look at the film because it was, he's very disappointed in his performance, and he said he missed some targets, and he needs to, when he's under pressure, he admitted that he needs to throw it away, which we've talked about before, instead of taking a sack. So he's got these things in his head, which is optimistic. And the other good news is that Montgomery, the coach, said it's not going to be a serious injury. It's a leg injury, but it doesn't look like it's one of those CL type of things. Hopefully,
yeah.
So that's good news. But Herbert stepped forward, and it would be nice to have both of them healthy. It would be quite a combination, and it was good to see even Ebner come in and get some work. So I think that the running game has been pretty successful all in all. I mean, over the last few games of the season, I mean, they even they got 281 rushing yards today, which is pretty impressive. So and 5.9 yards per play. Their passing yards was only 82, which is disappointing. So but they were pretty efficient on third down, 6 of 14 and whatnot. And the time of possession was pretty even. And unfortunately, Houston isn't too much of a measuring stick for me because they're admittedly kind of a bad team, and coached by kind of a retread, Lovie Smith. I mean, I never expected him to get another NFL job, to be honest with you. So
you know what, Marver, let's interject to that since we have a few minutes about the Lovie Smith experience. Growing up, I obviously didn't get to watch the '85 Bears, so my love for Mike Ditka is more through pop culture and growing up in the city. Lovie Smith to me was a heck of an NFL coach for a long time. And I do think he got done dirty going 10-6 with that team. Lovie Smith had a lot of things that he did wrong. There were times where it was clock management, timeout management, the way his offensive coordinators. There's a lot of things we could say about Lovie Smith. But I also think now that we have history, we know how bad this front office is, how bad this ownership can be. And I think they did him dirty because of hires that they made with Phil Emery and Mark Trestman and that whole regime. But with that being said, this does go to show how much the game has changed since Lovie took a team to the Super Bowl. And we also know the splits. And I want to get your thoughts on this from the game you were watching. Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans going in with Davis Mills. Nice quarterback at home, but we know his splits on the road. Do you think this matchup with the retread of Lovie Smith, knowing the draws of his cover 2, how they were able to attack it, do you think, and the measuring stick of it, do you get a little nervous in the progression of Justin in this game, the way this offensive line kind of looks? Or is this what we've been talking about the growing pains we're going to see for the next 14 weeks?
Well, I think that in the press have talked about how the Bears were practicing against this defense because the Lovie Smith defense is pretty similar to what the Bears play, because I guess these guys are from the same branch of the coaching tree, so to speak. So that was supposed to be helpful, but the passing game wasn't all that impressive. And you talk about Lovie Smith, they did play in this. He got into the Super Bowl in 2006. After all, in addition to what you mentioned about him maybe being fired with an excellent record, so he, but still it looked like with Illinois and all that.
Yes,
I thought maybe he was done. He was going to maybe be an assistant, and he's now he's not that young a guy. He's 64 now, so it's I thought he was kind of at the end of the line, but. Be that as it may, I don't like the beard too much either, by the way. I don't think that's that attractive.
It's like Santa Claus Lovey.
No, it's like a Dave Letterman beard to me, which I also think is unattractive. But in any event, men with gray hair shouldn't grow beards, I think. But be that as it may.
I want to grow a beard. I can't say anything because my baby thinks you were saying.
Well, I can't grow one. So, in any event, but it was good to see Lovey back on the sidelines, and unfortunately, his team is not that good. But this middle, I really didn't know that much about their quarterback. He seemed to be a pretty good passer today, and he took advantage of whatever defensive lapses there might have been from the Bears, because he got 237 yards passing, and that's pretty darn good. And so their passing game was good. Now, it's interesting in a lot of these games, even watching college games as I did yesterday. A team can really be shredding the other team with passing, move down the field, and then they can't get into the red zone. So they may have time of possession, they may have tremendous stats, but the key is to have more points than the other team. So and the Bears succeeded in that thanks to the Roquan Smith interception. And we got to give Cairo props for making all those field goals too. Obviously that was key. He made 3 for 3. So and even Eberflus was giving praise to Jackson on defense, and of course Roquan, and thought that Herbert did a good job stepping up. And it seemed like everybody agrees that Fields has got to improve. And is it the surrounding cast? Even on the post game, the post game show that often is watched by a lot of people, Miller was saying they need to get a number 1 receiver because they don't really have one. Is it Mooney? I guess it is now, but you can't. I don't think you can make that kind of trade in the middle of the season, get Allen Robinson back, or whatever. But I think that he made the point that they need a real number 1 receiver, and the technical aspects of it, whatever the defense is. Again, in answer to your question, it seemed like they had an advantage that they would know what to expect. But in that case where somebody knows what to expect, they're going to change what you expect probably, and try to make an adjustment so that it's different than what they're practicing against, to make it kind of difficult for you. And I don't know why they can't seem to get people open, or whether Fields isn't seeing them. I don't know what the issue is, but it seems like there's not a disconnect on the passing game for them, and the running game works just fine. And a lot of times what's going to happen is a team like Green Bay Monday night. Okay, so we had a great running game. Green Bay up by 2 touchdowns. Maybe they want the Bears to run the ball a lot and run the clock down.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. And in that game, which we didn't get to discuss yet, they got to a questionable situation near the goal line where they could have gotten within 1 score. So, I was saying Green Bay is going to probably let you run the ball. And then they're so cocky, Rodgers, et cetera, that they'll figure you get within 1 score. That means nothing.
It really does it sometimes.
I own you. So I just wanted to mention that too, since we didn't cover that game either. But in terms of this game, it's a nice win. It's better to win than to lose. And they're in a position here where they've got, the Giants and Vikings and Commanders coming up. And so they're in a position here where they could gain some confidence by winning some games, by not, being spectacular. Let's put it that way.
There are some things I wanted to hit on that I'm glad that you kind of went down some of these avenues. I think the first thing is Jim Miller bringing up, you need to get him a number 1. It's going to be interesting because this coming up draft, they actually have a number 1, a first round draft pick. Yeah. Now, are you going to use that on a left tackle? Are you going to use that on a rusher? Are you going to use that for a wide receiver? I don't know. The real question then becomes, you have $100 and something million of money, because this is the thing about this Bears season. It's going to be frustrating, I think, for a different amount of reasons. If you don't, make your expectations, if you don't tamper them a little bit. And this is what I mean by it. Okay. One, they're not going to be bad enough to get the number one pick. So already that frustration, you got to get that one done with it. On top of it, they have a lot of dead money on this cap. So they're paying for players that aren't on this team. So they can only bring in so much people. And then you have what's going on with Justin right now. We know that there are going to be times where we see the flashes because we think he's the goods. And then there's going to be times like right now. And I think you have to be honest with yourself and the assessment that we're making. Does he need weapons? Yes. Does this line need to get better? Yes. Are people playing on this offensive line that are in off positions? You're missing your center. You're doing this rotation with Patrick and Tevin Jenkins. So there is a lot of, there is a lot of turmoil, but it also falls on Justin. You talked about the window. I think we mentioned it last week. I definitely mentioned it with our interview with Josh Buchalter earlier on in the show, that an NFL window is different than a college window. And your anticipation is different. You're not throwing to the guy when he's open. You're throwing to the guy when you think he's going to get open, when he's making his cut. Are you making your progressions? Are the Bears telling him, no, you're not trying to just go with your main. You're going A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Who's your Y? Who's your U? How are you doing that? And I think for Justin, it's going to come down to how can he process it? And I think it's fair to judge that. Because it's one thing when it's on the field when you don't have the same talent, but all the mental stuff, it's what's important. Can he make the play come in and out? Is he progressing it? Is he feeling the pocket? Is he making the right decision, the right reads? I think it's a little early, but it's fair if you are concerned. Marvelous One, do you think people are justified after watching this to be concerned with Fields' play?
Well, here's the thing. Seems like the Chicago press is pretty much saying that we're playing now for 2023. I mean, you read the press, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Now, based upon Fields' skill set and watching him in college a bit, it would seem to me as though they got to make the defense honor his running ability more. In other words, he has to be a threat to run, and they have to see that they have to cover that. In other words, I mean, I'll give the line credit. I mean, it's not Herbert that did it alone. There have to be openings for him to get through. So the offensive line, as much as they're criticized, gets credit for any time a guy gains 100 and some odd yards, obviously. And so give them props. But to me, it would seem like the defense has to say, they have to be, a linebacker has to get to the point where they got to keep an eye on the quarterback because he might run. And he hardly ever does. I mean, even on a handoff, they'll fake to a guy and maybe he should run, and or a play action. So they've got to freeze some more linebackers, thinking that Fields might take off because that's a skill set he has, and I don't think it's been fully utilized. That's one observation. But and that will open up the passing game in my view, because maybe now the linebackers running towards Fields, and maybe there's a 5 to 10 yard throw that the Komet might be open or whatever, and that's just something that I see,
in this NFL.
Yeah. So that's his skill set. You have these quarterbacks that are fairly immobile, like the Texans quarterback. He's not going to take off, so you don't have to, look at that as a threat. So that's one observation that I make, that his skill set would to me, and it was really utilized well in college. I thought that I mean, it's a different game, obviously, different skill levels, but if you can freeze a linebacker or two, you might get a receiver open, I think, right?
That's it. I mean, think about it. The difference in the NFL is a step. Half step is what makes somebody wide open. And that's what's going to be interesting next season. So I don't want to, we're not here on the Sports Cubicle where we are breaking down our post-game show as your Chicago Bears beat the Houston Texans 23-20, moving to 2-1. It's the Marvelous One, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari throughout the entire show. I'm Mike Mercado. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. And I think one of the interesting parts of this entire game is we talk about the future and trying to find, we're talking about the media already talking about 2023, 2024. You're 2-1. And you're going to fall into a couple wins. I don't think, like Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, they have talent, but they're willing to give you the game. Kirk Cousins, there's times where he wants to give it to you. The Commanders absolutely got steamrolled by Philadelphia. Philadelphia might be a Super Bowl contender. But this is what I want to talk about for Bears fans. There is a blueprint to this, and it's Philadelphia. And it's the reason I bring them up. You're looking at Jalen Hurts. This growing pain is real. But the Bears in the NFL, we've noticed this. The margin of a great team to a bad team is very thin. And I think for this Bears team, you need games like this. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, Marvelous One. I mean, we know I am, but I want you to bounce this with you. That I think on film, it's important to have these sloppy wins. Because this Bears team isn't good enough to have all this crazy confidence beating a team by 20 points. It would have done nothing for the Bears to have 3-touchdown win over the Texans. I feel like you learn more. They're going to learn more with a game like that. And you still get the W, but all the mistakes you made. And I, for one, am encouraged by some of the stuff I've seen. But I also want to talk a little bit about what the future in the next few weeks is going to be. Do you think they're going to open up this playbook even more? You talk about what we've seen play well for Justin, what he does well. The most entertaining, most fun, most modern-day football we've seen for the Bears is when they're moving the pocket. He's rolling out to his left or right. You're seeing receivers go up in the middle of the field, somebody running a drag, somebody running a straight. And that's when it's at its best. Do you think we're going to see more and more of that? Or are they going to have the kitty gloves on for him?
The big play for San Francisco in my mind was a broken play.
Where
a guy broke open. So I mean, so that was more or less lucky in a way that happened. But I see that is going to be. Now when we look at it, I mean, the Giants are probably overperforming right now. That's the next opponent. I mean, the Bears could actually be 5-1, if they get in the next 3 games. But let's not get ahead of ourselves in terms of what's happening now. I think that there will be. They've got to open up the offense a little bit, I think, and get a little more creative. They did an end around with the receiver, things of that nature. Get a little bit creative, but play action, and some even a draw play. They could even do a snap to the running back. I mean, all kinds of different things exist. Whether they use them or not remains to be seen. So I'd just like to see a little bit more variety, a little bit more creativity, so that the defense doesn't know what to expect. And maybe that will help the passing game.
So I'm going to run some names through this, okay? Because we want to talk about the passing game, and people are just so excited about next year. Okay, how different is this Bears team if, let's say, you have DJ Shark on your team?
Well, obviously, any playmaker helps. So there's no question about that. The thing is that it's hard to say if one individual player will make a difference, because, I mean, I've seen excellent college receivers, for example, not even make it in the league. So you never know what's going to happen. But obviously, a playmaker helps. There's no question about it. And I'd be all for that.
And I think this is what's very important. We could kind of put this week to rest on this and kind of look forward to next week against the Giants. And I believe that that's going to be a game where we're going to see Saquon maybe go crazy, but we'll get to that in just a second. Now, let's say everything being equal, right? Bears win this game 2-1, and you just beat the Texans. What are the feelings of the fan base? What is the vibes? A win is a win in the NFL. Every win matters. But you didn't see, this wasn't a win in which Justin, like he did against San Francisco, a broken play hit somebody up the middle. Or even against the Packers, where he made a play and got into the goal line. He got into the pylon. So how are the vibes of this game?
Yeah.
Is it because Roquan got that interception and put it away? It feels a little bit better because this is a guy who's going to have to earn money. It's a game where Justin played bad and you still found the way to win. Do you think that the vibes, the energy, it's good going into a game against the Giants? Is the fan base happy? How would you, after all this that you watched, where are the emotions at?
Yeah, I think that the fans in the stands were getting pretty excited. Looked like they were going to dominate at 10-0.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that perhaps that would happen. I was surprised that Houston, based upon what the press is saying, was confident enough to make it 14-10.
Yeah.
Because yeah, even Field said during the week they have no superstar players. He said, out loud. So maybe that was bulletin board material in Houston. But in any event, so I mean, it was good. I mean, the other thing is that this might be a reason that they don't want Fields to be out running. I saw what looked to me to be a helmet to helmet hit when he was in the sidelines there, and he was like
Yeah.
doozy and that. So I can see where they don't want to risk injury with him, going, but he can head for the sidelines. He's fast enough to outrun a guy to the sidelines, and he should do that, And I see that with other, fleet-footed quarterbacks where they're able to head to the sidelines. And some of them almost dare the cornerback to hit them, because there will be 15 more yards as they get to the sidelines, right?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up too, because it is something that we've mentioned on this show about him. He needs to get down. He needs to make sure his head gets down. And I need to see the NFL take care of him. Now, the NFL takes plenty of care of quarterbacks. We were already too much. But, this guy is a big kid, 6'3", 230, maybe a little bit lighter than that. But I think that's all. Guys bounce off of him. And that's where it's dangerous, because Josh Allen, we talked about your one of your schools in Big Ben. Ben used to get crushed. Cam Newton used to get crushed, and they wouldn't call it because they're big dudes. Justin that's going to be something over time that he's going to learn, because Justin has a 4.40, right? Like a super fast dude, but he's not Lamar. Yeah. He's not Kyler. He's not Vic, where they had superhuman speed. Yeah. Justin Fields is a supreme athlete. And I agree with you. If you're going to design the plays to be like that, then you better make sure your offensive line gets down and is blocking him, that your tight ends are blocking, that your receivers are able to hold the block. That's going to be really important when it comes to the maturation of Justin Fields. But if we're talking about vibes, I think you hit it right on the head. A win is a win. I think people are excited because if you're in the stands, it's exciting. 2-1 is better than 1-2. And depending on what happens between Green Bay and Tampa Bay as of this recording, you're right up there with Minnesota. Detroit's a heck of a team, so that's going to be fun. But you have a better quarterback situation than Jared Goff. So I think there is some positives that you can have as a Bears fan. But I want to just spend a second as we wrap up this week. But now we look at New York. Again, how much of a litmus test is this? And we talked about it early in the season. The Bears can win a lot of games because the schedule is favorable. But if you win this, if you lose this, do you learn anything? Or is it, again, one of these cases where if Justin Fields goes 8 for 17 for 106 and 2 interceptions, you learn more from that than a win? Or do you learn the same thing as if he goes 12 for 24, 3 touchdowns, and they lose? Or they win? Like, do you think this all just is going to, from this moving forward, it's all just what we see on the field, the standings, and score be damned?
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a big advantage. We're going to have the Giants will have a short week. They play Monday night. So, I mean, maybe that can work to our advantage. But the Giants have overperformed, in my opinion. So, I don't know. They've won their first 2 games, and we'll see how they do against the Cowboys. I mean, they didn't exactly throttle anybody so far, but we'll see what happens. I mean, last week they beat the Panthers by a field goal. So, I mean, that's not overwhelming. So, we'll have to see how they do tomorrow. I'll watch that game with great interest to see if if this is a Giants team that is going to be tough or not. I mean, they obviously have playmakers. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of whether or not they're going to, Jones is, a good quarterback, and obviously they have the talent of Barkley and that James. So they have playmakers, and I think that it'll be a challenge for our defense, but I think that the offense needs to, again, be more creative and open things up. And we need to show a passing game and a threat of multiple running options to confuse the defense.
Yeah, and this is a game that's in New York, so you're going to kind of get away from Soldier Field. I actually think that plays better for the Bears, and I think staying away from the home crowd for Justin after that game, going to New York, I think that's a good situation for him.
Absolutely, and it'll be good to get used to facility since they play the Jets there too.
Yeah, and I think this is the tougher of the two matchups. The Jets did get better, but this is the tougher of the two matchups. I actually think the Bears defense is going to get to Daniel Jones. I don't ask me what I've seen on film to make me think that, but I do think Daniel Jones is ripe for the picking for this Bears defense. Saquon Barkley is going to have 147 rushing yards.
Yeah,
the offense is going to be all about Saquon. I don't care about Tony or Shepard or any of these other cats in New York. It's going to be the Saquon show. So it's what you do to answer, because your defense can't stop him. We already know your defense can't stop a running game. So you're going to give up a bunch of yards to him. I'm under this impression. Now, this is how I'm watching football, Marvelous.
Yeah.
Multiples of 3 and 6. It's 3 and 6. That's it. Yeah. Are you getting 3 points? Are you getting 6 points? Or are you getting nothing? If you get a bunch of 3s, okay, you'll hang around. You're not going to win. You win football games by putting 6 points on the board. And that's how I'm watching this Bears team moving forward. Talking about the maturation is, what do you do in a game like a New York game? Are you getting field goals? Are you only going to 20-20? Are you getting touchdowns? That's how you win in the professional league. That's how you win in the NFL. The great teams that go to the playoffs score 6 points. The good teams, 500 teams, 3 points. Bad teams stall on the offense in the red zone.
You're right about that. I mean, the Bears had 5 scores, which could have been 35 instead of 23 if they were all touchdowns.
Make one of them a touchdown. Just make one of those 3 a 6.
27.
It changed. And that's how in today's football, in modern day football, that's how you got to decide some of these games. Because the Sharks are making the lines 2.5, half a point nowadays to this Giant and Cowboy game. So the disparities are like, it's right there. It's all parity. So who's scoring who's making field goals, and who's scoring touchdowns? And this Giants game is a perfect example of that. Are you good enough against another mediocre team that's trying to find itself? Are you going to be the team that stalls on the red zone, only able to get field goals? Or are you able to score a couple touchdowns? Because I promise you this, if you get to the red zone, if the Giants get to the red zone, Saquon Barkley is getting into the end zone. That's a guarantee. So are you 3 or 6s? That's up to you. And I think that is a way to kind of just give our final thoughts. Marvelous one. Chicago Bears move 2-1. Your final thoughts on our postgame show.
Well, again, a win is a win. You can't be unhappy about that. And like I say, it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. If they are able to make some adjustments and get the passing game going against the Giants, I think that will help. And and then the next week, the Minnesota game will be here, and hopefully it'll be raining again, because that seems to be our secret sauce. And don't forget, when we get to the Jets, they have the resurrected Joe Flacco.
Oh, that's it. Championship for the Meadowlands. Let's go. No, unless Zach Wilson comes in, and I know that man, he's got some hunting skills, if you get my drift. Oh, that's a bad internet joke. I'm sorry, everybody. You go ahead, buddy.
But I'm happy with the win. Let's not, be too negative, and let's bask in the glory. And I want to see the Giants tomorrow night. I haven't really watched them, so I won't make too many judgments. We know their skill set. We know they're skilled players. I just want to study them a little bit more tomorrow night against the Cowboys.
You talk about putting pressure on you. If Cooper Rush goes off, Justin Fields has no choice but to have a good game then. Marvelous. It's a win is a win. It's the NFL. Better than the opposite, especially when your team is not going to get the number 1 overall pick. Want to see more from Justin. I think we're going to see more from Justin. I think Bears fans, be patient. Enjoy week to week. Enjoy the roller coaster, because this is the fun part of watching your team develop and seeing how it all plays out. Before we get out of here, I also want to make sure, a happy, wonderful, many more birthdays for the marvelous one, Dan Marver. A shout out to Paul Chivari's parents, who were celebrating a wedding anniversary. So shout out to the Chivaris. Devin, Paul, sorry guys. Sorry, south side of Chicago. They will be putting the White Sox season to rest this episode, because it did not end well for the boys on 35th and Shields. And a happy anniversary to my lovely wife, celebrating our first year this weekend. Love you, Nicole. So with that, we hope you enjoyed this Bears postgame show here on the Sports Cubicle with the birthday boy, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, with Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. We have a jam-packed show with you. Thank you all so much for joining us on this edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM.